For too long, First Nations across Canada have dealt with safety and security issues caused by a lack of recognition and enforcement of their laws. This has led to many offences going unchecked and has left residents feeling vulnerable and afraid. However, some First Nations have spearheaded new approaches to protect their lands and members. Initiatives such as the Whitecap, Dakota, and Muskoday First Nation Community Safety Officer programs in Saskatchewan enhance public safety with specially trained officers, preventing and addressing crime through education and enforcement.
Look across the country, all 634 First Nations. The RCMP will never enforce any of even our local Indian Act bylaws, our land code laws. So we started exploring what are the other options out there.
It was just before the election of 2019, and I knew I was stepping down as chief. I wanted to make my best effort before leaving as chief to address our concern, the lack of law enforcement on Muskoday First Nation lands pursuant to our land code. So I arranged a meeting with the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General, and also I invited Chief Darcy Bear because I knew that Whitecap were basically in the same situation, and asked if he wanted to participate in those meetings.
So we started talking with the provincial government, ourselves and the Muskoday First Nation, and then we signed a pilot project with the province to look at putting 5 community safety officers in each of our communities.
We originally had RCMP officers living in our community, but they have such a vast area to patrol that they weren't around all the time. Chief and I also went and approached city police, talked to the chief of police about patrolling Whitecap. We never got around to getting that done. Then COVID hit and we had security in our community, and the community loved it.
Having our own CSOs was just a natural phase-in for us, going from perimeter security and now having the community safety officers. And they basically got about 80% of the powers that the RCMP have. They can enforce traffic violations, they can detain people, they can do arrests. People, when they're out here, especially tourists, there's a sober second thought once they see that there is a policing presence, and whether it be the RCMP or whether it be our community safety officers. So it does deter any kind of crime, and then also make sure that people aren't drinking and driving.
A CSO is a support system for municipal and the RCMP officers. There's a lot of crossover between the authority that a CSO is granted through the provincial legislation as a special constable. They have arrest powers through the criminal code and several provincial legislation and bylaw authorities. In terms of the crossover between the RCMP and a CSO, it's more of a collaboration of authority. A CSO will respond to several offenses where there's no threat of violence and or weapons present. They will stand down on that location in those situations and wait for the RCMP or municipal police forces to arrive. They work in conjunction with each other to ensure a safe and secure community.
In 2023, Whitecap Dakota First Nation introduced its own Community Safety Officer program. Still in its early stages, the program has already significantly impacted the community, with members hoping that CSOs become a permanent and recognized essential service for Whitecap. Bradley Pachowis is one of the first officers hired and works with Whitecap's CSO team to ensure the safety and well-being of the community.
When I seen that Whitecap was hiring a community safety officer, I've always wanted to get started a career in law enforcement, and I figured the CSO program would be a great place to start. Since we started, everything's more reaction than anything, but we do patrol day and night to have that community presence, community engagement to ensure community safety.
I think it's been a good impact on the community. Everybody wants to be out there, community events. They're showing up there and assisting with traffic control. Everybody wants to see them out here and part of the community.
They have a lot of authority and a lot of responsibility, and that's why it's so important to have the support of the community, because they're going to make a difference in the communities, and they need the support of the community.
Along with Whitecap Dakota First Nation, Muskoday First Nation recently launched its own Community Safety Officer program to address the unique challenges faced by the community. In conjunction with Muskoday's comprehensive video surveillance program, CSO enforcement activities provide an additional layer of security and support while engaging with the community through outreach and education.
I guess we're no different than any other community, be it First Nation or urban or rural, that we do have crimes that happen in our community, and sometimes the RCMP aren't always the quickest to respond, and not their fault, they're short-staffed. But I think the biggest thing is community safety, make our people feel more comfortable in their own homes.
Muskoday First Nation community safety officers consult regularly with community elders to ensure that the needs and cultural protocols of Muskoday are carefully considered. These intergenerational discussions are essential in shaping the direction and function of the CSO program.
So what can you do when you're not going to be able to carry guns?
Right now, no, and
Bone arrows?
yeah, we have pepper spray, baton, handcuffs. So there's certain things that we're not going to be able to do, sadly. But we are on 911 dispatch with our CMP, so we can relay quite a bit of information for them.
I'm hoping that this will be a start of more people in the CSO program.
I talked to a few other people in charge of their programs, and they are expanding pretty much as fast as possible because there's obviously security risks, but they obviously know if you have only 3 or 4 people trying to cover 24 hours a day, safety concerns when people get sick and so on, right? They don't ever want to be shorthanded.
Just wondering with the elders, many of them live alone. So with your job, would you be able to go and maybe knock on the door and say, how is everything fine? Or
So we do wellness checks. You phone the non-emergency number for RCMP or 911 even, and even the fire department or CSOs now can do wellness checks.
Yep.
Whether the health worker can really want to do.
does that surveillance really help?
It is 24/7, so there's always someone there, and they're looking after the cameras. They can take notes. They can call 911 if they do see something on the camera. So it is good to have like that extra eyes, so they are useful.
Are you trained with CPR or first aid if something happened where the health people couldn't be there right away?
Yeah, all 3 of us have CPR,
Nice.
AED training. Yeah.
And since we have radios too, we can dispatch as well for EMS to come, and then we'll do what we can with our CPR until EMS shows up.
I do feel that the CSOs will be able to get more involved with the youth in the community, get to know them in a way where they're not afraid of them. Many of the young people are afraid of the RCMP and they tend to shy away from them. Well, maybe this will encourage more of them to go into law enforcement, or at least to see that there's a positive side to it. And I think it'll go a long ways to encouraging young people to be a better community person and all of that. And they'll be able to attend all of our functions, and I think that's a positive. It would be nice to have our own people standing up at Treaty Day and our kinds of functions. We always do appreciate the RCMP coming out for that, of course, but having our own members be able to do that in their uniforms, I think will be a big asset to our young people and to all our people.
Yeah, it extends out, shoots out.
They've spent a lot of time here in the building already before they even started their training, so they've learned a lot from the other staff members. They've learned from council as well, and especially their mentor or their program supervisor has helped them a lot.
The CSO program has been in the works for a number of years, and everybody is excited to get it off and running, and it's a community need. We are looking forward to having healthy relationships in our community with the CSOs. The program blends in nicely with our restorative justice initiatives, such as healing circles, mediations, and the Fine Option program. As a better way of dealing with illegal activities in our community, I feel the restorative justice approach will bring peace and harmony to the victims and offender while facilitating positive change.
Building that rapport with the community goes a long way. Just having that community engagement, going to events, summer games, the after-school cadet program here really interests me, is getting involved with the community.
By the mere fact of having our 2 units out there 24/7, policing the community, being there for our schools, our children, our educators, our elders, the community members have welcomed the program. They recognize that it is a significant advantage to having the program in place on Whitecap.
Creating security in First Nation communities through the CSO program is a considerable step toward addressing a larger issue. However, enforcing First Nation laws and reserve bylaws remains challenging for communities dependent on the RCMP or other enforcement bodies. These challenges require action-based solutions at the political level to ensure that First Nations can depend on the policing and prosecution of their laws within the justice system.
All governments make laws. First Nations lawmaking authority, particularly under the Framework Agreement on First Nations Land Management, the Framework Agreement itself is recognized and affirmed as law. Subsequent to that, land codes, which are pursuant to the Framework Agreement, are First Nations mechanism for creating First Nations laws. Most governments in Canada can count on law enforcement carrying out the prosecution on offences against their laws. First Nations governments should be no different in Canada when First Nations governance is recognized by law.
Yes, we have community safety officers, but then we got to talk about the prosecution side. So the province is now going to amend the Summary Offences Procedures Act here in this province to recognize First Nation laws, whether it be our Indian Act bylaws, whether it be our land code laws, whether it be our self-government laws, but those laws will be recognized and can be enforced because they'll be prosecuted with Indigenous justice of the peace. So that is coming this year. It's been tabled by the provincial government. People say, well, why the provincial government? Well, there is no federal trial court system, but once there is, we'll definitely move to that system. In the interim, though, we still need a way to enforce our laws, and that means they have to be prosecuted.
There's nothing better than walking out and seeing a community safety officer drive by and know that you're in a safe and secure community. It's a win-win for everybody involved.
So by working with the provincial court system, whether you're Indigenous or non-Indigenous, our CSOs can issue you a ticket and it can be enforced. And as well as our Indigenous laws in the future, they can be enforced as well. That's the rationale behind why we're going down this pathway.
The CSO program is a tremendous advantage to any community that might be considering to do it. It adds a sense of security and ability for the members to get connected with their community and work in collaboration with our other law enforcement agencies, whether it be law enforcement such as the RCMP or perhaps conservation officers. Everybody works together, you share information, you become more effective in enforcement through education.
The federal government has announced that policing is going to be an essential service for First Nations, so we have to continue to lobby and to work with the federal government to make sure this is an essential service and there is resources provided to all of our nations and that we all have public safety. Our elders are welcoming, and I think you as a tourist too will feel safe as well, seeing a police presence, like that. There is not just a lawlessness. There is, a law and order in the nation, and that's very important. And I think it creates comfort as well for everyone.
Many times our people are not treated fairly, and I think that we had our own police force that would give them more opportunity to be treated justly and fairly. And of course, a quicker response time, that's always an issue here in our community. More opportunity for dealing with justice and issues in our own way. Safety is always the biggest concern. To have our own police force would just increase that tenfold or more, to have our own.